Good morning, Cincinnati. We would like at this time to open our TV Toastmasters Advanced Club 9523 meeting. I'm Gordon Kelly, the president of this club. And a couple things I'd like to say today is, one is we had an open house last Saturday. And I personally thought the open house went really well. We had a lot of guests here, a lot of members actually from other clubs showed up. And I think we all need to give Steve Aaronholtz a big hand. Because really, what took place is while we all helped him and assisted him, he really ran the show and things really went nice and smooth, I think. Also, we have several new members that I'd like to welcome. Dilip, Kamath. Let's give him a hand. And we know this gentleman's wife, and he's here. He's a member today. Rick Barron. Dan McDevitt. Dan, yeah, there you go. There's Dan. Wanda Jones. And Tiffany Everett. It's Tiffany. We have a guest today in our audience, which I don't see any orange on. Well, he's got an orange pin, I guess. Joe Schwerling. And we did get, and Rick Davis. Mike Davis. Mike Davis. That's right. He's one of our speakers today. We're going to get right to business.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Today, we will have another thing I wanted to cover is I wanted to make sure everybody knows where we're at, because it's hard to see in an enclosed studio like this. And you won't be able to really see this picture, but I picked it up outside. I'm going to show it to you anyway. We are coming to you from the Anderson Center. Probably can't see that picture. I hope you can see it on TV. But this place is just really, really nice. It's unbelievable. And I thought I would pick this up. They have these at the front desk. You might want to stop, pick one up, take it home and show it to my wife. All right, let's get right to it. Today, our Toastmaster will be Darren Henderson. Let's welcome Darren Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. President, fellow Toastmasters, and our television audience. On Tuesday, those of us who live in Kentucky, and I may be the only one in this audience other than Gordon who does live in Kentucky, and Joe, are going to have our opportunity to express our points of opinion on the Democratic and Republican presidential elections. Now, of course, the Republican elections are pretty much completed, and most people will tell you the Democratic elections or primaries are pretty much a done deal also. But regardless of which of the three remaining candidates are elected president, we will have a first in either case. Of course, with Senator Obama, he'd be the first African-American president. With Senator Clinton, she'd be the first female president. And if Senator McCain is elected president, he would be the oldest newly elected president in the history of our country. So I would just like to take a few minutes to tell you a few other firsts. And just about every president who's elected, since we have so few, are the first at something when they were elected president. And for example, Bill Clinton was the only president to have ever been elected twice without ever receiving at least 50% of the vote. He received 43% and 49% in his two election campaigns. George Bush I was the first president to have ever been director of the CIA. Ronald Reagan, believe it or not, was the first president to have ever been divorced. Jimmy Carter was the first president to have graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy. Gerald Ford was the first Eagle Scout to have been president. Richard Nixon, and this one's kind of surprising, was the first president to have ever visited all 50 states. John F. Kennedy was the first Catholic president, but surprisingly enough, he was not the youngest president. Most people think he was the youngest president. He was not. Teddy Roosevelt was. And Dwight Eisenhower was the first president of all 50 states. So we have obviously a momentous occasion coming in November. So regardless of which of the three candidates are elected president, we will have a historic first. With that, I'd like to get into the agenda for today. And we have a fantastic agenda. When I'm looking at these, we have three great speeches, three different topics. I guarantee you, and I don't guarantee much, I guarantee you, you will enjoy today's program. But let's start by bringing up our word power and eye counter. And this woman is one of our newest members. This is one of her first roles in Toastmasters, so I'd like to welcome up Wanda Jones.
Good morning, as word power and our counter, I present the word vital. Vital. The function of the word is it is an adjective. The Merriam-Webster online dictionary gives 6 definitions of the word vital. I'm going to give the definitions and give you examples of the use of the word vital. The first definition is existing as a manifestation of life, concerned with or necessary to the maintenance of life. For example, a vital living organism. The second definition is full of life and vigor, animated. The third definition is characteristic of life or living things. The fourth definition is fundamentally concerned with or affecting life or living beings, as tending to renew or refresh the living, invigorating. Or another example would be a vital and charismatic leader. And the fifth definition is of, relating to, or constituting the staining of living tissues. And lastly, definition number 6 is urgently needed, absolutely necessary, or vital for a healthy society. Again, the word for today or of the day is vital.
Thank you, Wanda. And at that, I'd like to get into one of the most vital portions of any Toastmasters meeting, and that would be the table topics portion. So I'd like to invite up Tiffany Everett, who is our table topics master today.
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters and guests. As we heard, this is a vital portion of our meeting, our table topics. It's an opportunity for you to speak quickly on your feet in regards to a question that I have picked. Verna, if you could have front row seats to any concert, what would you like to see?
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. If I could have front row seats to any concert, what would I like to see? Actually, what I had wanted to see earlier this year was the high school musical, and that happened to be the night of the big snow. And I could not even get out of my driveway for 3 days. So maybe at some point in the future I will have a chance to see the high school musical. But right now that comes to my mind just because of the fact that I did miss that earlier this year. And there were quite a few concerts and plays in Cincinnati that I had wanted to see, because I volunteered to work at the Baba Badoon coffee shop, and that way I get to see these for free. So that was one that I was going to see, but because of the big snow, I missed it. So maybe somewhere in the future. Madam Toastmaster.
Laura Lee, what is one thing you wanted as a child, but you never got?
One thing I wanted as a child but never got. Oh, the quintessential little girl pony. I would have loved to have had my own pony. And there really wasn't much of a reason not to. I grew up on a 250-acre farm in north central Missouri. We had plenty of room for a pony. But we didn't have animals on our farm. We had a farm with grain that somebody else actually plowed the field and put into the ground and harvested. We didn't even do any of that. We had us 3 kids, and we always said that we had a farm that raised cars. Because my dad has an old car fetish. The first car I ever drove was a 57 hardtop convertible T-Bird in the barnyard. I was paranoid I would hit the broadside of a barn with the car. I would have loved to have had a pony, though. That is one of the things that my mother later wished that she had gotten one for me. My uncle had offered to get me one. But my parents were, no, that's too much. She's too young. I was about 6 at the time, and then my uncle passed away. So my mother said later she would have liked for me to have had the pony, so I would have had to have something more to remember my late uncle by. Thank you.
Gordon, tell us what the most beautiful place that you've ever seen is.
I think the most, because I don't know if it's the most beautiful place, but probably the most beautiful place I've ever seen is Smoky Mountains. Been vacationing there for 25, 30 years. And when you say you vacation someplace that long, evidently something's drawing you back. And it's really not the main street in Gatlinburg. So we usually travel up into the mountains, and I go over. I have this thing where I have to go over the mountains. It's not good enough just to go down to Pigeon Forge or a portion of the Smokies. And I actually, about a month ago, I got to go to a place called Andrews, North Carolina. And that's kind of coming into the Smokies from the west side. We had to go there and visit some people. And again, they have a really good view of the Smoky Mountains. And I don't know how many of the people here go to the Smoky Mountains. I know that the Smoky Mountains is the most visited national park in the United States. And they get around 10 million visitors a year. And one of the problems with that is that it's polluting the mountains, and they're trying to cut down the traffic. But I think the most beautiful place I've seen are the Smoky Mountains.
Our final question for today is going to go to Carol. What is your biggest pet peeve?
Thank you, Madam Tabletopics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and our guest. My biggest pet peeve is people who do not tell the truth. I have been known as being brutally frank, and I have to remember that in the Bible, Jesus answered with truth and grace. And I don't always have the grace with that when I tell the truth. But I love the movie Liar, Liar because he had to tell the truth. And I just wish that more people would tell the truth. If you have a complaint with someone, don't complain to everyone else who can't do anything about it. Go directly to the person that you have the issue with and tell them that that bothers you. You can work it out. But when you don't know that anything is the matter, you can't do anything about it. I know that many times when I would complain about my husband, I say, well, did you tell him that? I'm going, no, I couldn't tell him that. It's not doing any good to tell anyone about it, just the person that the issue was with. With that, my pet peeve, people who do not tell the truth. Madam Topics Master.
And this concludes our round of table topics for today. I hope that everyone enjoyed them. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Tiffany. With that, we'll get into our prepared speech portion of the meeting. And our first speech is going to come from a speaker who always has deep and insightful thoughts. And this morning, we're going to hear a fascinating speech called Fight. And she will tell us what to fight for, what to fight against, and how not to be consumed by the battle. Please welcome Veronica Sanford with Fight.
Thank you.
I am a martial artist. Does that scare you? I'm more scared by couch potatoes who don't work out their aggressions in the studio, but drive viciously on the highway. I started martial arts when I was in my 20s in Los Angeles. Scary place to be as a single female. And I remember vividly my first fight. I has a little 10-year-old fighting against me, kicking my shins as I tried to get away, until finally I got fed up. And I gave him an uppercut right into here, and he left the floor. That was the first time I had ever stood up for myself. And I was in my mid-20s. I stood up for other people, but I'd never stood up for myself. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, our studio audience, and our viewing audience, I'd like to talk today about what is important. What's important to you? What's important to our world? And what's important to our legacy, to the future, to our kids and our kids' 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 kids. When I look at what to fight for, what to fight against, and how not to be consumed at the battle, I have to acknowledge my many, many teachers. Because, of course, we don't go through this journey alone. When I look at what to fight for, I know it is to fight for our ability to stand up for ourselves and for people to be able to live lives in peace, freedom, without fear of starvation or war. That's not just us in the U.S., that's around the world. Did you have a tough childhood? If you didn't, you were blessed. I grew up in the 70s, 60s and 70s in California. And if you know anything about history, that period was a little bit tricky. I saw things that no kid should see. I experienced things that no kid should experience. But I have also learned that success is the best revenge. What I learned from my martial arts instructors is that the past stays outside of the dojo. Your battles stay outside of the dojo. When you come in to the place you're going to spar, you're only focused on the moment. And you train and you train and you train to become a better person in here, so that you don't bring your battles from out there in here. Well, that's true at workplace. That's true in the school. That's true in your relationships, one-on-one with your husband or your wife or your significant other. So what I say is fight for dignity, fight for your conscience, fight for peace of mind, fight for quiet. What to fight against? People? Do I recommend you do this whenever you get angry? I don't think so. Sun Tzu, the author of The Art of War, says the best battle is won by not fighting. If you have to expend that energy, you've already lost. So the question is, what to fight against? Apathy, fear. How many of us sit at home, turn on the TV, and the evening's gone? How many of us look back at our 20s and our 30s and go, where did the time go? How many on our deathbed will say, I could have done so much more? And when we look at a child just born with unlimited possibilities, what do we do with that space in between? So I say, fight against fear and apathy. When I was in my teens, I was rather like a teenager, and I asked my mother, where were you in the Holocaust? She had been a nurse in World War II. How could you have let that happen? What were you doing? She said, well, I was a nurse. I was going to nursing school, and I don't know. I guess we didn't know. I was busy. Do we have that same argument when we look at what's going on in Darfur or Iraq or Afghanistan or anywhere across the world? But it's not my problem. I don't have any control over that. We are the owners of those companies that sell arms to both sides of the battle. We own stock, most of us, not everybody. And that's actually a fairly new tradition in America. We as Americans with this mouth have tremendous power. And not only that, through the wealth of our lifestyle, the fact that we don't have to worry about how are we going to get our next meal every moment. How are we going to feed our kids every moment? Most people in America don't have to work every single day to just get that next meal. We have some freedom to think towards the future, to think about what we're going to do with that span. So what I ask you to do is not take on my battles, but to think, to turn off the TV and spend just a little bit of time about what are we going to do? What am I going to do? What are you going to do with that space in between here and here? How do you fight without being overcome by the battle? You get so passionate on one particular topic. That's all you see. And I could pick one from the media or from politics, but I won't. Whatever it is, if you're a member of the board on your school board, whatever it is, if you're worried about the environment, whatever it is, that topic can overcome you, can consume you. I'd like to ask to remember that we're all one, right here, all of us. In Peru, in Bolivia, Nicaragua, Alaska, the Appalachian Mountains, we're all one. So with the wealth of our lifestyle, with everything we have at our disposal, can we stop and say, I have enough. I have enough. I'm not going to force the companies that I own stock in to own more and more and more infrastructure, to have more and more and more profit. I'm going to start to ask ethical questions about what we are doing in America. I urge you to fight for what's right, against apathy and fear, and work together to not be overcome by the battle. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Veronica. You did not disappoint. That was, once again, a very thought-provoking and very deep speech, which I continue. And this next gentleman signed up to become a member of our club and signed up for his first speech within about a 5-minute window, so this guy's ready to go, which I like. This is his first speech at our club, and the title of his speech is Icebreaker. Let's welcome Dilip Kamath.
Good morning, everyone. When I signed up for this first speech, Icebreaker, I was as nervous as then as I was now. And I know it was vital to come really calm and cool, and my wife said, smile a lot. So I'm gonna smile a lot. And if you hear some thumping sounds out there, it's not the lectern, it's somewhere here, so. But I would like to take you couple of years back when the gas prices were, I know, $3.89, right? No. Anyways, I digress. I take you way back to 1837. in the shipyards of Philadelphia. And people were, hardworking men were working on a ship. And they were trying to do something very different. They were trying to double plank the hulls. And as bystanders, people are looking at the ship and saying, what are they doing to that ship? Because this was something extraordinary. And as you can see in Philadelphia, when people see something new, they always have to pass some really good comments. So you definitely see the conversation going on saying, yo, Joe, what's going on with that ship? And somebody else saying, I think those kids are up to something. And there are always some other theories when in Philadelphia too. Some are saying, it's a conspiracy. The government is up to do something. And some others were saying, this is something that unusual. We have never seen this before. Maybe something vital is going on with the ship. There was a big sign on the ship. It said City Ice Boat, all printed in bold letters. And somebody had painted number 1 next to it because everyone wants to be the number 1. So City Ice Boat number 1, big letters. In a couple of days, they also started strengthening cross members of the ship. And then somebody put some iron bands around the front of the ship. And it was not, this phenomenon was not just in Philadelphia. In former Soviet Union, they were building a similar ship. And this was in about 1864 in Kronstadt. And the name of the ship was the Pilot. All of these were steam-powered boats. And in 1959, there was a nuclear-powered boat, similar arrangement, similar structure in the front, and it was called the Lenin. United Kingdom didn't want to be far behind, so they built the HMS Endurance. Similar features, strengthening of the hulls, cross members, iron planks in the front, something very different. The United States Coast Guard in 1999 said, we are going to build the best of such boats. And they built the USS Healy. And this was nuclear powered. I know you're all thinking, this is supposed to be his first speech. He's going to talk about himself. What is this with the boats? All these boats are not common ships or common boats. These are icebreakers. They were used in maritime navigation to break ice, to clear ice, and surge forward. And when I looked at my first speech as icebreaker, I said, what's this history behind icebreakers? And as I read through that in Wikipedia, I saw a lot of parallels between what we do in daily life and what the icebreaker does. And that's the reason we call it an icebreaker. Because 3 fundamental things. You got to break the ice, and you can't leave the breaking ice right there. You got to clear it. And as you clear it, you got to surge forward. The momentum has to be there. Exactly the things that we do in our daily lives when we communicate to people and with people. Because we want to make sure our ideas come across, our messages are evangelized, and they are very different, right? Because the one-on-one communication that we do is very different from a speech that I'm giving to probably 50 or 100 people. And now if you have an accent like mine, it has to be a different icebreaker altogether. So, and there are a couple of other tidbits too. I draw a parallel in what the communications that we do as part of our daily life and icebreakers. It is not just, we all are very passionate about communicating our ideas, our messages across. And what really hinders our capability is the courage to be the icebreaker. So every time I think that there is some little bit of fear in communicating, I think about the icebreaker things that I read and said, no, I'm going to be the icebreaker. And there are a couple of other historical items in terms of icebreakers. John Gardner wrote a book a while ago for James Bond. It was called An Icebreaker. Viktor Suvorov also wrote a book called The Icebreaker. British band playing new music is also called an icebreaker. And we all know the brands of mints and chewing gum, which is also icebreakers. And when I talked to my children about this speech and being in front of a TV, my daughter said, "You're going to be in front of a TV?" I said, "Yeah, for full 5 to 7 minutes. And I don't even know what I'm going to talk there." And my eldest daughter, she told me, "Oh, you know what? It's icebreaker and it's about your speech. So I'm going to introduce something poetic into this. So I'm going to read out what she told me, right? She said once you finish the speech, and we've been on a cruise a couple of years ago, so I was trying to relate to that. And she said, you're leaving the port of anxiety. How cool is that? And she also said, you're probably leaving the shores of nervousness. I said, wonderful. But I knew she was making fun of me when she said that. So I'm confident soon. I see a lot of new faces. There are several new members. We're going to have fun. And each one of us is going to be the icebreaker we always want to be. So thanks, Toastmasters. Let's go break some ice. Thank you.
Very good job. That was a great concept for an icebreaker speech. And I'm sure you all thought I had lost my mind when I said his title was Icebreaker. You probably thought I'd misspoke. Do you ever feel stressed? Would you like relief? Mike Davis may have a solution. Mike is practicing for his regional contest speech in Ottawa, Canada on June 7th. He welcomes feedback from everyone in the audience, including our newest members. Does the speech make an emotional connection? What do you like best? What, if anything, can be cut? Let's welcome Mike Davis with his speech, Mud Puddles.
What pushes your buttons, really stresses you out? Maybe it's your hectic work schedule and the reality that you have to do more and less now, and you have to do it better and faster. Or maybe it's switching on the TV and hearing about the healthcare crisis, the mortgage crisis, or whatever new crisis has sprung up today. Or maybe it's standing next to the gas pump, filling up your car and feeling like those corporations are sucking you dry. Those experiences can escalate your stress to a very high level, can't they? Well, Mr. Toastmaster, ladies and gentlemen, Cincinnati, where is your stress level right now? Whether your stress is triggered by a busy schedule, the latest crisis, or rising prices, relief is possible. A few years ago, I was $20,000 in debt. My marriage was on the rocks, and my mother-in-law was being treated for breast cancer. I was losing sleep, losing weight, losing hope. I felt like a stick of dynamite ready to explode. Have you ever felt ready to explode? An intense argument between my wife Jerry and my son Sean was the match that lit my fuse. If you had been a fly on the wall, you would have seen me step between them. Every day's the same argument here. I'm sick of it. This has got to stop. I then stormed into my backyard where I kicked a garbage can, stomped over next to my house, and picked up the first thing I saw, a pair of hedge trimmers. And like a samurai warrior, I unleashed months of pent-up anger, anguish, anxiety on anything in my path. I have had it! When I finally came to my senses, I looked back at the damage. Oh no, I don't believe this. I had just destroyed the bushes. My neighbor's bushes, yeah, along with some flowers and the fence. Oh, but wait, there's more. Behind my shed, I looked over and I saw my 4-year-old son, Brendan, jumping into a mud puddle. And he was wearing his brand new shoes. Now, I started to yell at him, and he looked up, and he was so scared. He had never seen me lose control like that. I felt lower than dirt. I had scared my little boy. Brendan, why are you jumping in the puddle with your new shoes on, buddy? I'm just having fun, Dad. Great. I'm going through all of this, and all he wants to do is have fun. That's it. He knows what to do. Brendan wasn't just jumping in mud. In the middle of all that turmoil, he instinctively did something fun that made him feel good. That mud puddle was his stress relief. And it was my epiphany, because I instantly knew what I had to do. Join him, of course. Mud flew everywhere, each clump taking a piece of my stress with it. Brendan busted out laughing, and we smeared and covered each other from head to toe with that squishy, gooey, beautiful mud. We had a ball. Playing in Brendan's mud puddle reminded me how disconnected I had gotten from my stress relievers, my mud puddles, exercise, music, and laughter. I've used those many times since then. Now, your mud puddles will not eliminate your debt, fix your marriage, or cure cancer. But many times they have helped me maintain my focus and perspective when I needed it most. And they can do the same for you. Because Brendan showed me the real value of a mud puddle, I feel so much better today. I have recaptured hope, and I'm really enjoying life again. Are you enjoying life? Or are you on the verge of an explosion? Have you stopped using your mud puddles? Before you leave this room, think about a mud puddle, a favorite mud puddle of yours that you could use before the end of this day. It might be as simple as listening to an uplifting song like the testosterone-driven theme from Rocky. Or maybe it's going to, martial arts class with Veronica Sanford. Here's one that works every time. Blow off steam with a primal scream. You should try this right now. On the count of 3, give me your best scream from right here. Let them hear you out on 5 Mile Road. Let them hear you in the studio here. 1, 2, 3. Ah! Don't you feel silly? But don't you also feel better? I leave you with this. Life can be overwhelming at times. Don't allow the news of the day, your busy schedule, or the higher prices escalate your stress so high that you destroy your neighbor's bushes. When you feel that stress rising, go to your favorite mud puddle and then Mr. Toastmaster.
At this point, I'd like to get into the next vital portion of our meeting, which is the evaluation portion. And our Toastmaster of that portion, or our general evaluator, will be the woman who has a PhD in Toastmasterology, or whatever you would say, Carol Kormelink.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. It is vital that we have received feedback so we learn how to better ourselves in Toastmasters. My job as the general evaluator is to introduce the evaluators. At the end, I will evaluate the meeting as a whole and make suggestions to the evaluators, if I can think of any that they didn't think of. Our first evaluator, evaluating Veronica, and they have between 2 and 3 minutes to give their evaluation to the person who spoke. Our evaluator for Veronica is our guest today, Joe Swirling. Joe Swirling.
Madam General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, audience, especially Veronica. Motivational speech. This is the 5th speech out of the professional speaker manual, so she's got high objectives. The executive summary says, A motivational speaker's purpose is to supply listeners with the impetus to achieve a goal, appeal to the audience's beliefs and values through dramatization, vibrant stories, and enthusiasm. Objectives: to understand the concept and nature of the motivational speaking, apply a 4-step motivational method with the purpose of persuading and inspiring, and deliver a motivational speech to inspire an audience to emotionally commit to an audience. And specifically, persuade and inspire the audience to achieve personal success. Delivery should have an abundance of vivid word pictures and use of dynamic gestures. Obviously, you started out with the most dynamic gestures of all, and I applaud you on that. I've always been very subdued myself, and so that's among the things I need to learn. Did the speaker make her proposal understood? I'm sure we all just were personally involved in your stories, starting with your anecdotes about stages in your life and where the need to fight and to respond and all that. I think that was a great way to do it, and I'm sure the entire audience was deeply involved. I particularly liked your going into the part about what we're fighting for: the dignity, conscience, peace of mind, quiet, the entire range. Fighting against apathy and fear. Apathy is something I think we've all got a lot of. We just go through the daily routine. We don't have the stress, like Mike mentioned, to get us motivated and correct keep us on track. Your presentation was extremely positive and explicit. Extreme range of gestures, from the violent to the heartfelt and everything in between. I'm sure the entire audience was greatly inspired. The last thing on the evaluation template says, ask the audience to comment if the speaker caused them to feel an emotional commitment. Is there anyone that didn't feel an emotional commitment to improve, to make the world better? So I think you definitely achieved your purpose. I'll just conclude by pointing out that since I've been retired, I've tried to be a self-assigned ombudsman. I tutor and mentor the highway departments, traffic departments, cities, wherever I find them. Tell them if there's a pothole that needs to be fixed, traffic signal that needs to be adjusted, taxes that need to be lowered or better spent, and so on. So there's all kinds of things we can do, and I think Veronica's speech will encourage us all to not be apathetic, to get out there and fight for everything that's important, and even the little things that are important worldwide. Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, Joe. Evaluating Dilip's different icebreaker speech is Steve Aaronholtz. Let us go warm welcome to Steve Aaronholtz.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, our audience at home, and Dilip. What a great job. I've never heard an icebreaker speech about icebreakers. I thought that the analogy was fabulous. This was your first speech out of the Competent Communicators Manual, and the two objectives were to begin speaking before an audience and to discover speaking skills that you already have and skills that may need some attention. When I heard that your title was Icebreaker, I thought, well, I know he's doing that. That's the project that he has here. But then you were starting to talk about ships, and I thought, okay. And then I realized that you were talking about icebreaker ships. And I really liked the analogy that you drew with that to our lives and the things that we're trying to accomplish in Toastmasters. I thought that your speech development was very good. You had some body language and you used gestures, you used your hands. You had a very good, what I call presence, that we felt you were talking to us. How well did we learn about you? What did we get to know about you? I had to think about that for a minute because I thought, well, we learned more about icebreakers in the analogy that you were drawing, but we still did pick up on a few things. We learned that you don't take yourself too seriously because you had one comment about yourself that was sort of self-effacing, and I thought it was just kind of casual, so we know that you're not too taken up with self-importance, which is a good thing, at least in my mind. You also do have some daughters that are somewhat insightful, and they support the things that you're trying to do, because when they said you were leaving the port of anxiety, I thought, oh, that's excellent. All of us need to do that a bit more often. I thought that your speech did reflect good preparation and you used your notes, but I thought that it was a rather judicious use of notes because you also established eye contact with the audience. For a first speech, that is impressive in my mind. You spoke clearly and audibly. One of the things you had asked me to comment on was your rate of speaking. I didn't think it was too bad, but then I come from a part of the country where people tend to talk a little faster. I noticed you did increase your speed as you approached the end of your presentation. So that's something you need to watch out. I think two things that might help with that are a little more use of pauses for emphasis, and then be careful how much material you're presenting. Maybe you could have gone with one less example and just developed that a little bit more of the analogy with the icebreaker. I think that overall your presentation was excellent. I liked your speech development, opening, body, and conclusion. I welcome you to our club. This is your first speech in front of us, and I look forward to hearing your next speech. Madam General Evaluator?
Thank you, Steve, for that excellent evaluation. Our third speaker was Mike Davis, who is practicing for his regional speech. We hope that he is a winner and goes on to the international speech. The evaluator will be Gordon Kelly, our president, Gordon Kelly, soon to be immediate.
Mike, it's a pleasure listening to you speak, and you probably might want to check out Hollywood because you're a pretty good actor. You really got into that very heavy. But Mud Puddles, I thought that was a great, once we got through it, I thought it was a great title. What pushes your buttons and the stress and how we deal with that in life. And believe me, I'm one of those guys, and most of the people here that know me already know the stress, I guess, because I've had some stress problems. Your body, I'm going to give you the goods and the bads, and there's not a lot of bads, but I'm just going to give you some, shoot it out. Your body motion I thought was great. And most of this is all going to be positive. The use of the space, I thought was very good. The way you used this whole space up here, I thought was great. Eye contact was perfect. I didn't say anything with eye contact that was bad. Your message was very clear. We need to reduce our stress levels, I think is a big thing. The only thing you might want to do over here is use a strong stage so you don't go through it. Your pace was very good, both your speech and your movement. And I think that is two different things, the way I was viewing it. And you kept a very good pace with your body movement, your motions, your speech, your words. The more animated you were, I thought the better the speech was. And I'm not sure what this means. I'm just telling you from my perspective that I thought as you became more animated, it became more real and more serious. And as you became less animated and talked, it seemed to drift away from me. If that makes sense. I thought a very good sign was that the audience participated and it was fun. And I mean, it was complete. It was like everybody was into that. So that was just great. Your ending, I thought your ending was perfect, going back to the mud puddle. So I really didn't have a lot of negative there. I thought everything was really good, and I thought you gave a great speech. Thank you, Mike, again.
Thank you, Gordon, for listening and watching. My comments on the meeting, I thought we had a great meeting. Creativity at its best. I love Veronica's start with her body language and her vocal variety. That was excellent. My job is to give recommendations to the evaluators on something they might have done better. Unfortunately, I didn't find a lot that they didn't cover that I had. And that's one of my weaknesses. We have strengths and we have weaknesses. That is my weakness. if you are, unless you have something that's very obvious, like you're up here pounding papers or something, I don't have recommendations of things that you could do better. I'm not that creative. However, I did notice, I've heard Mike's speech before, and I heard him when he first gave this several weeks ago in Kenwood, and there is an element that was missing as you are rehearsing this. You're losing that spontaneity that I saw in that speech. The people here that hearing it first time probably didn't know that being rehearsed it's more as a it was different. That little element was missing. I don't quite know how to explain that and what you could have done better. But I like the way you revised your speech with the content. I liked the icebreaker. That was unique. And I as I said, I like Veronica's. One of the things, Tiffany had great topics for the table topics. One of the things that I did not hear was the timing explained, that a table topic is when you are caught off guard and you speak for 1 to 2 minutes on a subject not of your choosing, and generally, which she did in the first question, was to ask the question and then ask the person to answer that. So everyone is thinking about the answer, and then the next one she said the person first. It's better if you ask the question and then the person. But good, great job, Tiffany. Our meeting started on time. In fact, it started before I was ready. But we started on time. Gordon, quick business meeting, great, that was out of the way. Word power, vital, very good. Overall, I thought we had a great meeting. I encourage people that are viewing us in the audience, I encourage the new members to have their icebreakers ready, and I will return control of the lectern to our Toastmaster, Darren Henderson.
Thank you, Carol. I think I promised you a great meeting. I think we did have a great meeting, and we had a very interesting scenario with our speakers here today, because we had Mike Davis, who was going on to a regional speech. So you have a guy who's really one of the elite speakers within Toastmasters, a very advanced speaker in Veronica, and Dilip, who is giving his first speech in Toastmasters. And all three speeches were fantastic, engrossing, and very entertaining. So it was a very interesting that we had, a very experienced speaker and a guy giving his first speech, and they were all entertaining and engrossing. So I think it was a great meeting. And once again, I did guarantee you a great time. I think anyone who watched this, I'm sure you did enjoy all three speeches and the meeting in general. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our president, Gordon Kelly.
Couple of things. I think number one, it's vital that we don't mess with Veronica. So I got it in, Veronica. And I don't really want, I said that so it would be funny, of course, but I don't want to make light of her speech. And I don't know if everybody knows, but there's a couple points. 3-4 years ago, I did a lot of research on ethanol. And Ford, his original cars, the Model T, Model A, whatever this car was actually designed to burn ethanol. It's a tidbit, I don't know if everybody knows that. So ethanol is really not a new thing. In the same breath, the world today has 6.2 billion people, and as of 60 years ago, it was doubling at a trend of every 60 years. Now that trend has slowed, but 6.2 is going to turn into 10 billion people in a matter of 60 years, I'm sure. Do we have any comments from anyone? Okay. I'd like to say again, thanks, Joe Swirling, for coming today. Mike Davis, really great to have you here. I want to say thanks to all of our new members again. That's really great that we have, I think it's 5 new members. So let's give them a definitely hand of applause. Any other comments? At this time, TV Toastmasters Advanced Club 9523 is hereby closed.